So to apply the layout that we're using here to our board, we need to jump into our board script, and right back up the top we're going to create some variables. So we're going to create a private board layout reference that we'll just call board layout, and we're also going to create a private gem 2D array called layout store. So this is where we're going to store the layout that we get. First thing we're going to do in the awake function here is say board layout, a small b, there we go, is equal to get component, because we know this is going to be attached to the same object that our board script is attached to. So we're going to get component board layout, like so. Now, as I said, we don't need to have this in every level. So we'll have it in level 3, for example, but we don't have this attached in level 2 or level 1. So if it can't find the component, that doesn't matter. It'll just leave, if it can't get the component, it'll just leave board layout as null, basically. So then what we're going to do in the start function here, where we set up the all gems array, we're also going to set up our layout store array is equal to a new gem array of width and height, like so. And then when we go to set up the board here, before we do the actual setup, we're going to do a check, and we're going to see if our board layout is not equal to null. So basically, if there is not, or if there is a board layout attached to us, if we have a specific board layout that we should use, then we're going to say that our layout store should be equal to from our board layout dot get layout. So you might be thinking, oh well, if we do that board layout, we know that's going to return a filled out 2D gem array to us, which is perfectly good, and that'll assign it here. So that's exactly what we want to have happen. If that's the case, why do we create a layout store up here that would just be empty? Well, the reason we do that is because we're going to compare with our layout store and see if there's anything in it, and if there is something in it, then we're going to spawn that gem into position in the world, and if there isn't, then we'll just leave it as a random gem. So we need to have a default one that is empty that we can compare against, just in case we don't fill it in if there is no board layout here. So then with that in mind, all we have to do is in here where we're spawning our gem, right before we choose the random gem that we want to use here, we're going to add a little if statement to say if the layout store at position X and Y is not equal to null, then the gem we want to spawn is actually the one from the layout store. So spawn gem new vector2 int at position X and Y, and the gem we want to use is whatever's in the layout store at position X and Y. And then we'll say else, otherwise go ahead and pick a random gem to spawn in, the same as we used in the old system. And that's it. That's pretty much how this whole thing is going to work. So let's save this and go back in. Unfortunately, we couldn't jump back into Unity to demonstrate a lot of this stuff as we were writing it out, because it wouldn't actually work until we get to this point where we're assigning them. So with that in mind, then we have set up the board layout to set up these certain gems. So let's go ahead and see if it works. And there we go. We get our gems down in the bottom left corner here, and in the bottom right corner, and in the bottom left, like so. So just to make double sure that this is creating a nice pattern for us. Now the only thing with this is there is a potential for bombs to replace some of the layouts because of the way we're spawning bombs in, but that's perfectly fine. That's just part of how this whole thing is going to work. I'm going to make an interesting pattern here, so I'll just fast forward through this process and I'll be back in just a moment. Okay, so I've just set up a kind of crisscrossing blue and red gem pattern in here. So if I go ahead and press play just to demonstrate this whole thing is working nicely, there we go. We get all our gems appearing in an array, and handily there's a little bomb as well. So now we can see we could do this and blow up a whole bunch of things, and then we'll be back into spawning random gems again. This is very coincidental that this blue has appeared here like this. That's just completely random. That has no bearing on what's going on here at all, because we never pull from the layout grid again, only at the very start. As you can see, it's being completely random again now. But it's just interesting to see it does work correctly, and we can do things like we can create a match down here that'll do a big explosion, and there we go. We're now into creating a game. So now in our levels you can have as many interesting patterns as you want. You can have smiley faces and things like that. Whatever you want to do in your levels is now possible.